Deoxyribonucleic acid is made from two strands of double helix. So then,
here you go. So the first thing is deoxyribonucleic acid is our framework for our genetics. It is, of course, DNA, and that's what DNA stands for, deoxyribonucleic acid. So our DNA is a blueprint for all of our genetic makeup. It has all of our information on it. We know that our DNA is approximately 2 billion base pairs long. That's human DNA. 2 billion base pairs long. Remember that your DNA is made up of sugar phosphate base that continually repeats, so it's truly a polymer of nucleotides. And remember the base pair rules, A to T and C to G. And remember that what we have is we have two complementary strands. Okay, those strands are complementary to each other, and what that means is that they have the opposite base pair. So if this is C, this is G, and this is T, this is A. So it follows those base pair rules that you learned a long, long time ago. Okay, we know that our DNA codes for approximately 20,000 genes, so we know that the information for our genes, and our genes, determine our traits and our heredity and tell our bodies what to do, and make proteins. Really, the information for our genes is hidden in these letters, A, T, C, and G of your DNA. So that's really where the information is. It's not really the letters themselves. It's really the combination of letters and in whatever order they're in. So they code for a protein, and it's a certain message. Chromosomes are made of DNA that is wrapped around proteins called histones. And so it coils up and supercoils and wraps up around it tight, 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 tight until it makes this X-shaped structure called a chromosome. Know that most of the time your chromosomes aren't really X's in your body. They're just one arm of it, and it's only an X when your DNA is reproducing. So that's a huge misconception that every drawing in the world does. But at any rate, know that your DNA is wrapped up to make your chromosomes. So your chromosomes are really just DNA. Okay, we know that our chromosomes contain genes because they're made of DNA. Remember that your DNA is made up of parts of DNA that are coding and parts that are in between. That's that intron. So basically you've got part of your DNA that codes for certain things and parts of your DNA that are just in-betweeners. Not that it's not valuable, but it doesn't really code for a specific thing. And so, a long time ago we talked about if you damage your DNA, it depends on where you damage it, whether that's going to affect you. External factors like smoking and living under power lines and playing in microwaves or whatever can damage your DNA, but if it damages the in-between stuff, it's not really going to be a crucial damage. Remember that your chromosomes are made of genes, and that genes are segments of DNA. And here you can see on this chromosome the banded part of this, the part that is coded, is a gene. And so here you've got several genes on the chromosomes here. Every chromosome is different in terms of what genes it has. But notice there's also that in-between part right here, which is still made of DNA, but just not coding for a specific gene. So that's this in-between part here. All right? Okay, remember that human DNA is basically condensed down into 23 pairs of chromosomes. 1 through 22 are called autosomes, and they're just non-sex chromosomes, and they determine all kinds of other traits. Pair number 23 is the X and the Y, and that is your sex chromosomes. That is here, and this being a female. Females are XX, and this being a male right here, and they are XY on their 23rd pair. Okay, So that's a normal karyotype. That's what normal humans have. And again, notice it's not an X. There are two sides to your chromosome, one from mom and one from dad, but they are not. They're never X's. Okay. The only time your chromosomes will X is when these chromosomes actually reproduce, and they'll both replicate or copy their sides, and so then you'll actually have 46 pairs. Okay. So that's a big misconception. All right, meiosis is a process you learned a long time ago, and I'm going to cut to the chase. Meiosis, really, really simple, is how your body produces eggs and sperm. Okay, so we produce eggs and sperm all the time, producing eggs and sperm, and here's the promised land here, gazillion sperm trying to get into the one egg. And so we know that meiosis produces what we call haploid cells. They are sex cells, and they have half the genetic information. So we call them N. They have 1/2. Normal cell being 2N, that's called a diploid cell. And it has the normal amount of information. So meiosis produces haploid cells, and that makes sense because you want your cells to have half the genetic information so that when they reproduce, a sperm, which has half, and an egg, which has half, is going to get together, voila, and you're going to have a full amount, which is a diploid cell, which is a little baby here. I don't know what those are. Antenna, maybe he's a mutant. I don't know. Anyway, so that's what meiosis is. Okay, we know that our traits are passed along through chromosomes. So as you have your chromosome here, this is chromosome number 1. Let's say they have those traits right on them in those genes, and we use letters called alleles, which are just letters to represent what that trait is really for. So instead of writing out A, T, C, G, all that garbage, we'll put a big T or a little t for that trait, and that'll tell us what that trait is like. Remember that we have dominant and recessive traits, a capital letter being dominant and a lowercase letter being recessive. Remember that the dominant trait hides or masks the recessive trait. So, for example, in this cross, we have two parents that are having a baby, and let's say it's a plant. Okay, the one parent is big T, so those chromosomes actually carry that trait right on them on a spot, on a locus, a location for a gene. The other parent is short, and so they also carry in the same location a different allele, a different form of the same gene, in this case short. So this is called a Punnett square, and you may have to do one of these. I assume they'll give you all the information and you'll just fill it in. But a Punnett squared, and you just bring the information down. So it's big T, little t, big T, little t, big T, little t, and big T, little t. And so you just bring the information down and put it in the box. These out here are gametes, which are sex cells. And so notice that they're haploid. And these are zygotes, which are fertilized eggs, which are, offspring. And notice that they are diploid. They have twice the amount. Okay, you had one from mom, one from dad. Here you got them both. Okay, so this is like sperm up here, and these are part of the egg down here. Okay, so here's the babies. So traits are passed along from generation to generation through chromosomes. That's why we make those chromosomes. Okay, mutations happen a lot of times when our cells copy their own information when they reproduce the chromosomes. Mutations during meiosis, meaning mutations that happen during meiosis making sperm or egg, can be and usually are hereditary things that are passed on from generation to generation because you've made the mistake in the sperm or the egg, and that is going to go on to the offspring. So if the sperm that gets into the egg, and that's the key thing, is not every sperm gets into the egg. If the sperm that is damaged is the one that gets in, then that baby's going to get whatever mistake is made. Okay? It doesn't have to be hereditary. If one of the billion sperm is damaged and it's not the one that gets in, then that trait is never passed on. Okay? It is important to note that mutations don't make superheroes. We're not making X-Men here. Typically, those are genetic disorders, and usually those are unfortunate situations that happen, and they're rarely good. Okay, so understand that. Okay. Okay, so we talked about how our sex cells reproduce. The rest of our cells, 205 other cell types, are reproducing by a process called mitosis. And you might remember mitosis, that's the one where you did IPMAT, interphase, prophase, metaphase, anaphase, telophase, right? Remember, we're at copies and splits and breaks apart. Okay, this is how our somatic cells reproduce. Our somatic cells are all our cells but our sperm and egg. I'm oversimplifying, there's a few others, but for this, all of our cells but sperm and egg. Okay, and they basically do, what binary fission is for bacteria. They copy and they split. Theoretically, these should be identical copies of each other. They should be identical in every way genetically. Okay, are they always? No, because sometimes mistakes happen. Mutations to mitosis are not typically hereditary in that you're going to pass it on to your offspring, but definitely to the cell that gets it, it's going to have that mutation. Now, if you have 100 trillion cells and one of them has a mutation, it's probably not a big deal. If you get a lot of mutations happening in a spot, or too many cells happening in one spot, then that is a genetic disorder called cancer. We have too many cells, or they're not working right, or something like that. And that is typically a mistake of mitosis in some way. All right? And lastly, just a topic that's in the news a lot, so I want to review it with you real quick, is stem cell research. There's a lot of different kinds of stem cells. The one that is the big outlawed thing that everybody talks about are embryonic stem cells. Embryonic stem cells are significant because they're pluripotent, which means they can turn into any of the 206 different cell types that our body has. So they're pretty important. If you can get one, you can turn it into anything. The downside of that is it comes from an embryo. Excuse me. It comes from an embryo. So you've got to get a fertilized egg. You've got to get the cells when they're very young in a thing called a blastocyst. And so it's very, very, very early on in a pregnancy. And what they do is they take these cells right here, and these are the cells that turn into the fetus right here. We take them instead and we carve them out and we grow them. We separate them and grow them. And we can get these stem cells that we can use to cure diseases and lots of really cool things. The big deal is that people think that when you're taking this right here, you're killing a fetus. And so, there's the big argument there. Okay, whether that's true or not, I don't know. That's everybody's opinion's a little different. So that's what embryonic stem cells are. There's other kinds of stem cells. There's like blood stem cells that'll turn into any of the blood and other ones. So they're coming up with more creative ways to get these stem cells. And the real future is finding ways to not kill the offspring, but to still get those stem cells. So we'll see. Time will tell. All right, well, that's all. I'm going to shut up. So have a great day.